toplumsal cinsiyet eşitliğini küresel ölçekte ele alan ve sahada somut etki yaratan çalışmalarıyla bu alanda önemli bir rol üstlenen Birleşmiş Milletler Nüfus Fonu Türkiye temsilcisi Sayın Mariam Han'ı alkışlarınızla sahneye davet ediyoruz.
Good morning. Günaydın. For the rest of it, I will speak in English, so if anybody needs to get a headset, I give you a minute. I'm delighted to be here with you today. It's always good to be in Istanbul, but it's especially good to be here with a partner, and thank you, İpek, for inviting me. A partner that speaks about gender equality, a partner that invites men and women to talk about gender equality, because equality is not just about women. Men also benefit. So today, I'm not going to give you a long, boring UN speech, but I'm going to leave you with 3 important dimensions to consider. Some maybe you know, and some maybe you haven't thought of before. I'm going to talk about ensuring rights, justice, but doing it across the life cycle. Life cycle essentially means that from the moment a child is born, how does she access opportunities, vaccination, nutrition, the right to an identity differently from the time that a boy child is born? The reason this is important to think about is because over the course of a life cycle, disadvantages from the moment of birth translate and grow into disadvantages throughout the life cycle. So at UNFPA, the UN Population Fund, population is all about people. We look at the dimension of rights and justice through the life cycle. In this life cycle perspective, we advocate for and provide services so that the girl child has equal access and opportunities, equal amounts of safety. And more importantly, because we're here with Renaissance and you're a very big employer of people, we're going to focus a little bit about the workforce and what it means for a woman, equal rights and justice in the workforce. The right to have a career, but also a family if the woman chooses to do so. The right to work with safety at the place of employment, and that's the business against domestic violence that İpek, you also mentioned. The right to take leave if necessary, and the right to come back to work also, despite having taken leave, even if that leave is a maternity leave, that could be quite long. This is important not just for the individual woman, this is important also for the company. From the UN perspective, we speak about the moral imperative, but there is also an economic imperative that is equally important, and it is very practical. And when we work with the private sector especially, we look at the economic data. So today, I'd like to share with you one of the latest researches that UNFPA has done with the Ministry of Labor. And it has analyzed the data for 111 million women over the past 10 years, roughly. And it's analyzed their data from the private and public sectors, looking at when women drop out of the workforce. Because at this time, in Turkey's context, there is a need for women to be in the workforce compared to OECD averages. Women are far below present in the workforce. It's about 36%. The national target is 40%. For a country that has such good education, that's fairly low. So let's look a little bit at what the data tells us. The data tells us that women start dropping out of the workforce within the first 12 months after childbearing, and that's only about 4% of women. By the time it gets to 36 months after having given birth, the child is 3 years old, almost 73% of women will have dropped out of the workforce. 7 out of 10 women will drop out of the workforce in Turkey by the time their child is 3. This is the point where men have tremendous pressure as single earners in the family, and women have no choice because their care burden responsibilities are so high. The data also tells us that the care burden distribution in Turkey is quite disproportionate. And I want to emphasize it is disproportionate all over the world. But in Turkey, the data tell us that women do almost between 80 to 90% of all care work. Care work includes cooking, cleaning, laundry, childcare, care for the elderly, or any other family responsibility that automatically, culturally, traditionally, emotionally falls on the woman. But this has an opportunity cost. It has an economic cost because there's only 12 hours in the day, working day, let's say, and most of us should only be working 8. But if women are spending predominantly all their time doing care work, which is not paid, it means they're not in the workforce. So these two sets of data that we have now analyzed are telling us that we can adjust policies because they are policies for half-time work and unpaid work. But for half-time work, less than 4% of women avail this. Now that's fascinating. Only 4% of women avail half-time work. It begs the question for what is it in the structure and the system that doesn't facilitate that, and what is it in the personal life that also doesn't encourage women to avail this. Unpaid work is used, but there's a limit to it. And 24% of women do use that. Again, it's a very low number. So the good news, the glass half full, is that these policies exist. The glass half empty is why are they not being used? And how do we fill this glass up with water? It's to ask ourselves these questions and to consider what policy changes do we make in the companies? What policy changes do we advocate for nationwide so that these opportunities can be used by women, so that they can be in the workforce and so that they can also have families but not be disproportionately burdened by care work. That is justice. And I started out by saying that I'm delighted that there's also men in the audience. Data from across the world shows us that when there is more gender equality, levels of happiness in a community and society are higher. The pressure on men when they are the sole income earner is lower. The joys of fatherhood can be enjoyed by men as much as by women. The challenges of diaper changing can also be enjoyed by men as much as by women. These are important, practical, real dimensions of everyday life. Big data. I gave you a data set of 111 million women. But this is everybody's daily life. You know, you have experienced it, I have experienced it. This is a powerful group of individuals in this room. It's important to reflect on this data. So as UNFPA, one of the priorities for us going forward, and this was my third point, is that we're advocating for family-friendly policies. Family-friendly policies is a set of interventions that allows men and women, but it does focus especially on women, to avail opportunities that do not make motherhood something that they have to choose over their careers. Just like men enjoy fatherhood and careers, so should women enjoy motherhood and careers. But it requires a bit of a change by the women and by the men. More importantly, it requires a change by the decision makers to analyze their economic data and recognize how they can retain skilled, qualified women and men who can continue to grow the bottom line of profit, but also grow the value of happiness they bring to their families or as individuals. So family-friendly policies is a growing piece of our work. I invite any of you who's interested to engage with us. We'll be having a consultation on this. İpek, we've discussed a little bit of this already. And I really look forward to having these conversations, but also moving forward with collective effort so that this can be something that we all are not just talking about, but acting upon also. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day. These are turbulent times that we're living in, and it's really important that we keep advocating for peace. Thank you very much.
Mr. Han'a çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Miss Han, thank you so much for your contribution and for your perspective you brought into our lives.